What's up, everyone? Today we're going to be taking a look at another popular Vocaloid song that I believe is one of the better examples of how you can use not just the lyrics and visuals to tell a story, but the song itself. And the song we'll be looking at today is Heat Abnormal. Another song by Iyowa? This is part of a series of videos where I analyze Vocaloid songs that I've come across in my Vocaloid journey that in one way or another surprised me and left me in awe. These are songs that I fell in love with for a multitude of reasons, and these videos are a means to output that love and share my perspective on why I believe these songs are just so freaking good. Last time, we took a look at Kyu Kurarin, a song by Iyowa that told the story of a depressed teenage girl gradually falling into turmoil. Today, we're going to magnify that number. More precisely, we'll be going from analyzing the tragedy of one life to the tragedy of approximately 8.3 billion. Heat Abnormal is another song of Iyowa's that tells a grim tale, only this time, it's on a planetary scale. I'm sure there are many people who are aware of what the overall story of Heat Abnormal tells, but I wonder how many people know just how deep the Heat Abnormal hole goes. I mean, I know I sure didn't before. Oh, was I in for a time. Creating this video was much more difficult than I anticipated. There was just so much to this song. I struggled thinking about how to go about presenting all the facts and theories and speculations surrounding this Vocaloid song, but in the end, I came out of the hole with a much deeper appreciation for not only Heat Abnormal, but Iyowa as a musician and a storyteller, and I once again find myself emotionally struck by another one of Iyowa's works. Now, quick note before we begin, this video will primarily be going over Heat Abnormal. We'll be going over what makes the song so good lyrically, visually, and most importantly, musically. But before we can touch on this song, there is something I feel I have to touch upon first that may be essential to understanding the entirety of Heat Abnormal's narrative, a timeline of sorts. This timeline takes aspects and events from other Iyowa songs into account, but whenever I attempt to establish a link between one of these songs and Heat Abnormal, just keep in mind that it's purely conjecture crafted from the loose details these songs provide, and that these ideas are only speculation. The main idea that I'm trying to present is that Heat Abnormal's story spans across a multitude of Iyowa songs, but how exactly these songs relate to Heat Abnormal remain to be seen as of posting this. This is not an official timeline of events set in stone. In fact, there is no clear-cut timeline of events confirmed by Iyowa just yet. In fact, I'm sure Iyowa still has more planned for the storyline, but it's just, while doing research for Heat Abnormal, I found out about all these other songs, and it's so fascinating, I just had to talk about it. I like to at least bring these songs into more light for those that may not know about them, like I was before making this video. And in order to avoid spending too much time on this section, I'll just be briefly summarizing these songs' stories. No deep dive analysis with these songs like with Heat Abnormal. And huge shout out to Iyowa community member Bedrose, who helped me make sense of these stories' details when I was looking into the translated content. I reached out to them at a point where I had hit a wall of sorts, and they were kind enough to explain some of the details regarding their translations, as well as giving me a new and extremely detailed perspective on the overall story, so I'm super grateful to them for that. With that out of the way, let's begin. I guess we'll just have to go back in time for a bit. By how much, you may ask? Oh, just about 16 years. Heat Abnormal is a song by Iyowa that was released on October 7th, 2022 on Nico Nico and October 12th, 2022 on YouTube. As of recording this, it boasts over 3.96 million views on Nico Nico and 25 million views on YouTube. This song is featured on Iyowa's third album, Films, Sunny Spots, Graduations. On the album, there are a total of 24 songs, split onto 2 discs featuring 12 songs each. And each song on the disc features a counterpart song present on the other disc, which are connected or at least related in some way. These will always correspond to the song's track number, meaning on disc 1, the third song's counterpart will be the third song on disc 2, and that the counterpart for the fifth song on disc 1 will be the fifth song on disc 2, etc, etc, you get the idea. With this in mind, the track listing we're going to pay attention to is track 10. This is where we'll find the song Heat Abnormal, at least on the second disc, because on the first disc lies a song called Heat Normal, and this is where our story could have began. Heat Normal is a song about 2 girls, let's call them Singer M and Singer G, who reminisce about the sights, smells, and feelings of the time they spent together during their summer days. Singer M talks about things like counting the color of notes, This is just my guess, but colors can carry an abstract meaning in Japan, sometimes in ways that talk about the feel or shape of something, so it's possible that the color of the notes she's counting refers to the literal structure and notes of a song that singer G may have played for her, a tune that she's beginning to recall the shape and feel of, hence the notes singer M is counting.
Hot and soul, I fell in love with you, heart and soul, the way a fool would do madly, because you held me.
She recalls more feelings and memories, like going out for walks with singer G and playing the same song on repeat around them, just for singer M to get tired and tell them to stop, which, fair enough.
Bro, what are you doing? That's a good song.
As singer M begins to doze off, reminiscing of all these sweet summer feelings, singer G also begins to doze off, but remembers something else entirely, one of which is the silhouette of something unfamiliar in the distance, watching them. Who or what exactly this something is a mystery to both them and us. She mentions its silhouette is ebbing and dwindling, and as we all know, normal human silhouettes don't do that. Well, at least mine doesn't, but one of you watching could just be built differently for all I know. It's also said that this figure changes shape right before their eyes, all without exchanging a word, and that their mirror is watching it all, which tells us, the listener, that all of this is being reflected off of this mirror, and that this definitely isn't just some sort of hallucination. Pretty creepy stuff. But when we get to the main chorus, both girls sing of waves of a rippling world that swept them away. But despite feeling the otherworldly presence, there's no telling what to make of it, or where they will go from here. But they do leave us with some chilling repeating lines that evolve as the song progresses. We go from to then the song ends on It is important to note one thing, however. The warmth is not what you think it is. In fact, a more literal translation of heinetsu is normal temperature, and it will always refer exclusively to the human body temperature. So heinetsu pretty much describes the state of a person at 98.7 degrees Fahrenheit or 37 degrees Celsius, which is pretty warm on its own, but it's a heat that's normal to our human bodies.
Get it? Because
Heat normal, but it's a heat that's normal.
Don't let that go over your head.
Now, there are a couple ways to interpret what this heinetsu could mean for the story. One way is to take a look at singer M's optimistic and happier perspective in the song, and interpret their state of disappearing heinetsu as a sign that they begin to feel warm thinking about the warm memories over the summer. Singer M might even be blushing thinking about it all, which does raise the body's temperature, as one's blood flow begins to increase. On the other hand, singer G's heinetsu also dissipates, their body temperature also rises, though it could be for an entirely different reason. Thinking about the strange silhouette they saw on that fateful day and the feelings in the air, she feels sick to her stomach thinking about the startling experience. Essentially, though there's a striking polarity in what memories they choose to define this summer with, they both experience their heinetsu disappearing. There is another way to interpret the girls' waning heinetsu, however, and when I asked Bedrose for their input on these lines, they believe it's being used by each girl to indirectly refer to each other, as they express their perceived emotional distance from the other based on how much warmth they feel, both the physical and emotional warmth. But wait, emotional warmth? What could that mean for these two girls? Well, there is something I have yet to mention about this song regarding its origins. This song was originally released for a fan album coinciding with the release of an Idolmaster's Shiny Colors doujinshi, and that said doujinshi dives into the relationship of two girls from that series. Said doujinshi also features quite a bit of romantic geary undertones. So if we take that information into account and apply it to Heat Normal's story, you could also say that these girls aren't falling in love with each other. As such, their physical and emotional heat rises, and their heinetsu disappears. There's also another theory coming from @Moku2TAM on Twitter, where they suggest that the use of heinetsu is a substitute for heion, a word that refers to tranquility and peacefulness, and that Heat Normal talks about the gradual dissipation of this peacefulness. With this, we can interpret our previous repeating lines with "the peace is waning," representing a sort of calm before the storm, which evolves into "the peace is going away," and then "I'm waiting for the peace," which tells a story of two girls waiting for the peace, which will never return, and will soon evolve into something much worse than they both could have imagined. All three of these are pretty solid ways to look at the use of heinetsu. However way the story goes, they all put together a narrative that, when lined up next to the events of Heat Abnormal, make its tragedy hit like a truck. So that was Heat Normal, Heat Abnormal's polar opposite in the album. But did you know there are other events that may have possibly happened in between these two songs? I did say this was potentially a whole storyline after all. Enter Uwagaki. Uwagaki is a duology of songs that Iyowa released as participation for the 8.0 iteration of the YouTube Music Weekend event. It consists of 2 songs, both named Uwagaki in Japanese, but the second song's name is written entirely in hiragana, as opposed to the first, which uses some kanji characters. In English, they're referred to as Uwagaki and Right Over Me respectively. To quickly summarize the first Uwagaki, it's entirely instrumental, and features a medley of different Iyowa-themed piano arrangements. These songs include Don't Return to the Water Corpse, Imawa no Kima, Kyu Kurarin, and Heat Abnormal. In universe, we follow the perspective of an individual at a bus stop waiting for their bus, and a woman in a sun hat who accompanies them. The piano medley you hear in the video is actually a collection of songs played and recorded individually by our sun hat girl, Uwagaki. Uwagaki has our MC listen to each song through her cassette player and a pair of earbuds, and is curious on what they think of her covers. This video actually starts off really innocent, just 2 friends sharing a song. Uwagaki talks about her experience playing these songs, as well as our experience with listening to these kinds of tunes, but as we progress further into the video, Uwagaki begins to get self-conscious about her performance. Oh, not of her piano playing, it's another more demanding performance. You see, shortly after sharing the pair of earbuds with each other and listening to more of her covers together, they come across one that, upon being heard by Uwagaki, single-handedly flips the entire narrative of the video. It's a song that Uwagaki states to be from 16 years into the future. Would you believe me if I told you there was a way to travel back in time? We now have the technology to overwrite, is what she said. We found out that Uwagaki is from a future timeline, where with their technology, the past is tangible and malleable, and using her invention, she was able to successfully place her present consciousness into her past self's body, and that is who appears before us. She comes into this timeline to attempt to change something, to overwrite something, but this is a cruel world and changing the past is not that simple. Let's say for instance she were to win the lottery that day. Tomorrow would be as if nothing had happened and she won't get any money. If she predicts a disaster one day, it won't get aired the next. In other words, her actions now don't matter. Her actions are being overwritten by the current true reality and nothing will change no matter how much she attempts to deviate from the true past. Uwagaki also reveals to our MC that she originally came to say goodbye to this person, and now she stands before them with a single request.
Don't get on that bus. Let's talk for just 30 more seconds. Hear me out. Please don't go.
That brings us to the second song, Right Over Me, Uwagaki. It immediately succeeds our previous story, and looking at our visuals, we can see Uwagaki crying on the bench, all alone. It's unknown whether our MC from the first Uwagaki actually stayed and talked like she had begged them, or whether they had said no and got on their bus. Ultimately, however, it won't matter. We've established that as long as Uwagaki is playing by the time travel device's rules, her choices don't matter, as they are doomed to be overwritten at some point. With these thoughts, we're left with Uwagaki on the bench, alone to reflect on her circumstances. The song is about Uwagaki bidding farewell to the world, as she reflects on her youth and her relationship with our MC from the first Uwagaki MV. She wonders if they even remember her at this point, and she copes with the reality that everything around her will soon disappear, like the crying cicadas, or the feel of our MC's hair, and even the aroma of the shore she sits at. But to say that everything around her is soon going to disappear actually parallels another certain song quite well, hint hint wink wink. But in this case, it's better to word the situation like everything is soon going to be erased, soon going to be overwritten. It's even scarier to imagine when you pair it with the MV's visuals. Over the course of it, you can see each and every lyric line being slowly written over until all of these thoughts are overwritten and fully obscured. And when every line has been overwritten, it moves on to the world around her, until everything there has been overwritten. In the song, Uwagaki comments that she's overwriting her brain, her memories, her love, her regret, today's events, among many other things. Everything is effectively overwritten, and by staying in this timeline, she is including herself, all while an anthem of the end plays in her head, and it will continue to constantly repeat itself. But this does beg the question, if reality is only going to be overwritten, shouldn't Uwagaki herself be okay? It'll be as if nothing had happened and she'll return to her original timeline, right? Wrong. In fact, she will have completely vanished from the fabric of space-time by the time the override is complete. But how? This effect has to do with the nature of the quote-unquote time travel device itself. Did you know it has a name? They call this device Slip. Now, how this device bends space-time and allows its user to travel back in time, as well as how the universe overwrites these slip time events, is shrouded in mystery. There are theories that the researchers and engineers of Slip have come up with, but that's for us to talk about another time. There aren't any definite confirmed ties of the Slip device to Heat Abnormal, so we won't be covering this in full today. But if you'd like to know more about this Slip device, I highly recommend checking out Iyowa's The Making of Slip video in full. It's a super fun watch, and I believe that understanding the events and effects of the Slip will ultimately lead us closer to finding out what exactly is happening in Heat Abnormal. I'll leave an English translated version of The Making of Slip in the description below for folks that are interested in checking it out. In this segment, I've left out a lot of the details with these songs, as it would not only make this video too long, but I'd even like to make a separate video sometime in the future giving a more in-depth look into this whole Uwagaki and Slip timeline, as well as analyzing those songs' compositions, discussing popular theories, and bringing some of this speculation to light. But for now, let's move on to the main event, shall we? Allow yourself to be immersed in the likely result of this all, as we move from one repeating song of the end to another. Heat Abnormal begins with a very calm and collected song structure. Everything you hear not only has very simple rhythm patterns, but plenty of room to breathe and plenty of chances to let other instruments play out. You can hear the vocals of our voice bank and MV character Adachi. You can hear a very simple kick drum pattern, and you can hear a piano and pizzicato violin working together to assemble this melody we hear in the instrumentals, with these two instrument lines assembled into one like building blocks. This line makes quick and rapid jumps from the low notes to the high notes, creating this bubbling effect in the melody, almost like if we were to have some kind of liquid on the stovetop. We blast the heat on high, and right now, we're at the stage where the bubbles are just beginning to form, and it's preparing to go from a gentle simmer to a harsh boiling soon enough. But only if we choose to give it more heat. And given more heat, we will. The melody is just dissonant enough to keep you on your toes. The song has a minimal and simplistic feel for now. It's almost warm and comforting, but you can't exactly rest like this. It's just getting too hot. This is only the calm before the storm, and I'm sure you all know exactly what's to come, including our focus character. Our singer talks about repeating a dead variable, and that repeating this dead variable has made their temperature rise. Now, as you'll see later on, we can substitute this variable for a lot of things, but in this specific instance, notice how the first line in this song is about counting a variable, and counting this X variable made her temperature rise. Didn't we just talk about another song with that same setup of counting X and making their body temperature rise? Remember how singer M used to count those music notes from the songs her friend would have her listen to all the way back in Heat Normal? Remember how we talked about singer M and G's body temperature possibly changing upon recalling their summer memories? Now in Heat Abnormal, we parallel this scenario. Repeating this X variable causes our main character's temperature to rise, which could be a fancy way of saying she's beginning to blush thinking about their past. Maybe they're thinking about somebody they used to know, something they used to sing, or maybe even something they once saw. Either way, I think it's really neat we can draw some sort of parallel this early into the song. As for why she refers to this as a dead variable, well, there's really no concrete answer to this question. But could she be aware of the X variable's inevitable fate that it will cease to be? Maybe this X variable is related to a friend who she knows will meet or has already met their end. Thinking about why the X variable is considered dead certainly does raise questions. As she reminisces on her past, she prepares to monologue her present. She begins to log her pitiful soliloquy, though she knows that it won't have anywhere to go or anyone to tell it to in the end. It's also worth noting around this part that there is an extremely subtle reverse synth line in the back that slowly crescendos as we near the end of the bar, and then it all comes to a sudden stop, and the verse repeats itself. Now combine this effect with the main piano and pizzicato line that start off with this diatonic on-key phrasing and then progressively gets more dissonant as we near the end of the bar. By the time the phrase loops, the tonal center drastically shifts and it creates a strange and unnatural loop. It almost gives the feeling that the song's instrumentals are on an intentional loop from the tape recorder. It could also give the feeling that something was spliced or glitched out of the tape. One thing is for sure though, the tape recorder is beginning to feel the effect of the heat, and its performance is interrupted with a buffer effect that restarts the tune, or in this present case, buffers us into the next section of the song. The song bursts forth into the first verse, and in comes the chaos from our developing story. The drums evolve from a simple kick drum pattern to something more full. We now have the snare added on beats 2 and 4, and a repeating 16-note triplet pattern on the hi-hat. It's still a very simple pattern like before, but its evolution is a reflection of the story's progression. This time around, we're also introducing another layer. It's a second, more vibrant piano that plays over our first section's melody. Just like the other piano line, you can hear its melody also intermittently making frequent jumps to the lower and higher notes. With this extra layer, we're taking our light simmer from before and introducing more bubbling into the pot. Which can only mean one thing. Our temperature is rising even higher as the simmer grows more violent in this section. This energy is even reflected in the singer's voice, more specifically her delivery. See, as a material heats up, heat is being transferred into its microscopic atoms. This process creates energy, kinetic energy that the electrons absorb and use to move around much faster than they would have if they were colder. And Heat Abnormal's first verse mimics that thermal motion reaction perfectly, as the lyrics are sung at an incredibly fast rate to show just how hot and energetic things are getting. There's also a side to this rapid fire delivery that we haven't addressed yet, the fear factor. If we put ourselves in the shoes of the singer, we can physically feel the fear circulating throughout our entire bodies like an electric shock. She mentions black particulates floating through the air, which can only mean fires have begun to break out around her. We also have this black kusarigama chasing her. Now, I'm not sure what this means literally, as I'm sure a chainsicle didn't just gain sentience, grow legs, and decide to chase the singer until they trip and fall, and then use that chance to slash them to death. No. But we could look at this chainsicle as a metaphor for death coming our way, and in that case, it could mean two things. Either one, that she finds herself figuratively looking death in the eyes here, and if she eliminates it, either by running away or distracting herself in her head, it will only come back to haunt her thoughts again. And or option 2, the heat is at the point of affecting her head and she's beginning to hallucinate death chasing her through the black smoke. And now that the heat has reached this point, she won't stop hallucinating no matter how hard she tries to snap herself out of it. Heat Abnormal features a plethora of lines that repeat itself over and 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 over again, using that same inertia from the speedy rapid fire delivery that precedes it. This can also be interpreted a number of ways. It's possible that this repetition is due to the singer feeling extreme anxiety, and her repeating things like is her trying to cope with the reality that the end is here, and that she's speaking out of true distress for the situation. It's also possible that the tape recorder device the singer is recording on is stuttering mid-playback due to the heat damage, and that the heat damage was conveyed in the song through these repeating lines. At this point, the singer has screamed so much that they damaged their throat and their voice is unrecognizable. They notice death still following them and try to scream for help, but the nonsense coming from the throat is drowned out by the pandemonium in the area, as a rotten crescent moon overlooks everything and cracks a smile. Okay, a lot is happening right now, so let's take a quick pit stop. Oh, and remember this little melody that plays during these little breaks. For the sake of the narrative, think of it as a sort of comfort motif. It's something that you'll always hear when the song is at its calmest state. A little jingle that plays when the narrative takes a breather. The instruments take a momentary pause as so much is happening, and we just have to catch our breaths. As if the narrative's gonna let that happen. We snap back to reality and the situation is even worse than before. A new piano line comes in and wavers back and forth like a heat haze. This piano line repeats itself again and again and continuously rises to the higher notes of the keyboard. As the temperature rises, so does the urgency in the air, and this piano acts as if it's growing more desperate to warn us of something, similar to how a fire alarm would warn occupants in a building that a fire has broken out somewhere. We now take a look at what the situation is like for the people around the singer, and it seems everyone is handling it in different ways. Some wave the flags of salvation and ask God for forgiveness and a chance to be saved. Others burn that same flag and use this chance to be selfish to those around them. And some accept their fate and lie in their figurative coffin. But at the same time, everyone is collectively thinking the same thing. Some imagine there's a place everyone can go where the pain will stop and everyone will be saved. No more pain, no more of this deadly heat. Everyone believing this had boarded an ark, mistakenly believing that they could all be saved and sent to an eternal paradise. Unfortunately for them, there was never a paradise to go to, and there was certainly no saving these people either. The description paints a scary image. It's like the heat and flames were too much for the engines and oils and gas tanks, and the entire ship burst into flames and pieces, killing everyone in and around the ship, all as the black stars stared back at them. Now, what exactly are these black stars? Well, the word hoshi in kuroi hoshi can absolutely refer to stars, but it also refers to any sort of celestial body, so it could also be a planet that the song is referring to. With this in mind, it's also ambiguous as to what exactly this catastrophe is that we're dealing with here. It's possible this planet is caught up in the blast of a supernova, or maybe a humongous world-ending meteor is approaching the planet at a high velocity, or maybe there's a black hole that suddenly appeared to swallow their planet whole. All three of these are outcomes that would increase a planet's temperature dramatically. There's also a secret fourth option that I believe could be the case, but we can talk more on that in another video. Either way, heat death of the planet is a guarantee. So, assuming it's the former supernova scenario we're dealing with, we could conclude that these black stars in the sky are other planets that have already been consumed by the heat blast, and these black eyes everyone sees in the sky staring right back at them are the charred remains of what was once a planet, as a grim foreshadowing in the sky of what's to come for this planet. Otherwise, it would also make sense for the giant black celestial body staring back at the people to be a meteor or a black hole. We find ourselves needing to take another breather. Ah, there's that motif again. Ah, that's better. More time to collect myself. Okay. Great. Let's see what's been happening on the outside while we've been lost in our own thoughts. Goodness, it's even worse. All the instrument layers are blaring like the light that blinds our singer. Everything is much louder than before now that we've reached the chorus, and the screams of the people are no exception. We've got new synth lines to really emphasize the evolution. The piano glissandos up and down, waving back and forth dramatically as the heat haze grows stronger. Even the drum line grows more dramatically. Not only do the drums pack more of a punch here, but the kick, snare, and ride cymbals are panicking and being slammed in unison on the same beats before coming to the sentence and forming a more developed, energetic rock beat to push forward and propel the song. There's a sense of urgency in the air, and about every layer is about as busy as can be during this section. Even the 1, 6, 3, 5 chord progression starts off playing a chord once every bar in the first half, before switching to a more desperate double-time slamming to really keep things moving. And Adachi Rei's vocals are no different, as she starts off singing in a normal octave in the first half, before panicking and switching to a more anguished and desperate higher tone. But hot air naturally likes to rise. So it's only natural that Adachi Rei's vocal lines are also congruent with that movement. And so she follows suit. And the piano in the back plays a very similar sounding dead variable we heard at the beginning to really emphasize and support Adachi's vocal lines. Like everyone is working together with the energy they have to relay an important message before their demise. And you can hear with that kick drum stutter at the end that the recorder is beginning to sustain more heat damage, and it might not last very long from here. Little fun fact, but did you know there's actually another voice singing in Heat Abnormal? Not just Adachi Rei like the title of the video says. She's actually been here for most of the song, singing the backing vocals and creating the vocal line's 3-voice harmony that's present for most of the song. It's Miku. I thought I'd bring it up now since you may be able to make out her voice better here. Iyowa even credits Miku in the video's description. I sure had no idea it was here until I saw this, and this might be the case for most of you as well. Isn't that neat? Anyway, listening to the piano section of this, you can hear the piano lines create a new eerie melody underneath, bubbling unpredictably, like hot magma oozing and bubbling at a volcano site. Or more specifically to this case, the tears of the distress that immediately bubble and evaporate upon exiting the eyes, leaving behind only the salt content. This is addressed by the singer in a pretty dark way, by stating that the suffering, sympathy, prayers, and pity will all form the tears that would become the salt that is valuable and bountiful enough to make a profit off of. Though I'm sure no one will be around for that step. The screams have become too much to ignore, and even if we try to distract ourselves from it, we can still clearly hear every scream, every plea. And then there's this line. fish obviously can't talk, so it's gotta be a metaphorical fish. So what does it mean in this case? Well, I interpret this line as a man who's fully given up on their dreams of happiness, accepting that he's going to die, but refuses to die by the heat's hand. So he's not only swimming in a figurative sea of self-awareness, but a literal puddle of his own blood by his own hand. And that discharged blood then begins to permeate the area around our singer, all while we've now entered the danger zone of the narrative, the culling point. Remember that comfort motif from earlier? Before, we've heard it used in a comforting context as we transition through the smaller gaps of the song. This time around, so much more chaos has unfolded around us. This isn't just about our pain anymore, is it? Everyone collectively seeks a way to escape this pain and suffering. Before, we just had this one instrument singing our comfort transition motif. However, now all the main instruments attempt to latch onto it. But something is terribly wrong. Everything is terribly wrong. There is no more distracting yourself from reality. The heat is now too much for anyone or anything to bear. The damage to the recorder is also far more serious than before, and it begins to stutter like it never has before. The visuals even reflect the damage. It's like even our camera is being affected by the heat. Everything looks bad enough already, but then all of a sudden, a sharp wailing pierces through the song, and the gravity of the situation is felt by every person in the world. You can interpret this in two ways, these being A, the screams of millions being heard from all around the world as everyone collectively meets their painful demise, and or B, the raid sirens that begin to sound all around the world as the entire planet is declared in a state of emergency. Not that there's anything that can be done about this, but scream in agony. Think about it. One moment, you're walking down your walkway to retrieve your mail, or maybe you're driving to or from somewhere, maybe you're eating out at a restaurant, are you at school, at a community event, hanging out with or talking to friends, watering flowers, working out, hiking, swimming, stargazing, working, watching a show or movie or video, relaxing in the comfort of your own room, playing a game, playing an instrument, drawing, singing, dancing, fighting, loving, hating, or maybe even just sleeping like a baby in the comfort of your cozy bed. But the very next moment, without warning, certain death appears in the sky and stares directly at you and everyone else around you and nowhere near you in the world, right in the eyes. There's no time to prepare, as a thermal anomaly begins to ignite the very air you've been breathing all your life, on the very planet you've been living on all your life. Notice how we're still holding on to that comfort motif from before, even in all of this chaos. But it's only a hollow shell at this point. It no longer plays like it used to, as it's actively being attacked by the heat. The drums are even more active than they've ever been, even making more frequent use of the high toms and low toms during this part. We now enter the final stretch. We recall back to the dead variable that generates heat once again, but now that we've made it this far into the story, it's time to look back at our variable and reassess it. Before, we had made reference to a possible tune in which its notes were counted. Could this now be a dead variable because our MC is coming to terms with this dying reality? At this point, do they know they won't be able to go back to those times? Does X equal these now dead notes? Or with heat abnormal's current context, does X now equal the lives that are being lost to this disaster? Are there too many dead variables to count now? Either way, our MC begins to once again count this dead variable, but their body temperature now involuntarily rises, as a thermal anomaly now begins to form inside of them. Notice how the loud synths can still be heard in this calmer section. As we reminisce about the beginning, we manifest another calm before the storm, another chance to remind ourselves that this pitiful soliloquy won't be addressed to anyone. And yet, she uses the last of her consciousness to scream out a message to someone. this someone likely won't be around either. But if, by some sliver of hope, on the minute non-0% chance that something happens to find the recorder beneath all of the rubble and chaos, this last push, this final message is for you. Brutal. It's not like there are visuals to confirm every little detail of the people during these final moments, but my personal interpretation of this last chorus push is that it all started with an explosion near our singer. We've established that we're at a cooling point, so naturally raw materials like oils and gases are going to catch fire and explode, like it did with the running gases on the arc from earlier. And this nearby explosion is what snaps us out of our daydream in the bridge, as all of the instrument layers ignite and ring out. We're given enough energy from all the other instruments for one last push through the final chorus. Now that we're here, we hear that the world's inhabitants begin to say their last words, and ashen clouds follow the smoke trails of the seagulls in the sky. It's at this point of the song where our singer shifts an octave higher, but in addition to her sense of urgency to finish her message, and the fear factor of everything unfolding around her, we can also add another meaning to our octave switch. What were once screams of imperativeness could now also be interpreted as screams of agony. It's possible that she begins to combust into flames right around here. As her torment continues, so must her message. She looks to the lifeless celestial bodies in the sky and begs for a tomorrow to thrive in. That this is all just a bad dream and that she'll wake up tomorrow like nothing happened. As she looks towards the eye in the sky, she's reminded of someone she once knew. Someone that she once loved. She dreams of being able to hold their hand once more, but acknowledges that this will only ever be a dream from here on out. Death has arrived, and we must let go of these silly fantasies, just like how the fish in the song's second verse did. Thoughts are beginning to cease, and all she can think to herself from here, now that a heat abnormality has formed inside of her, is how unbelievable this situation is. I mean, just look at the before and after comparison with the beginning of the MV, and compare it to the very end. Did you notice everything got progressively hotter as the MV went on? Let's take it a step further and show how a normal sky should look, by referencing the Uwagaki MV. As you can see, distinctly different skies. It's scary to think about. As she writhes in pain, the rotten crescent moon from earlier that looked down on everyone and smiled, now begins to laugh, as a familiar melody comes back and slams itself on the piano. Life flashes before our singer's eyes, and death consumes all. So here's a neat detail that you may or may not have noticed. In the MV, the entirety of the lyrics is placed in quotation marks, from the very first sentence of the song to the very last. This can only mean that everything that we heard our singer say throughout the course of the song has already been said, that everything was pre-recorded and logged on to the recorder. This even makes sense in retrospect when you think about how the audio stutters and repeats itself. She would have already had to have recorded it, and it'd be the cassette tape playback that's stuttering and corrupting from the heat damage. Anyway, the video ends with this shot of the tape recorder on the ground with a flower laying by its side. Visually, it's a pretty scary way to end the video, I can't lie. We go from seeing someone on the screen throughout the entire MV to seeing no one on screen, at a point of the story where we can pretty much assume no one else remains. Now I ask you this. At what point of the story did the shot occur? Was this at the very beginning or the very end? Now really, I feel the answer depends heavily on how you interpret Adachi Rei. Is she a representation of our MC who recorded the message? If this were a shot of the beginning, then that would explain the flower's presence. Because if all life as we know it burns up in flames, from the humans that walk the earth to the seagulls that soar it, then how on earth did the flower survive the end? It didn't. This shot could be at a point where our calamities are beginning to manifest, fires are beginning to break out, and in the chaos, our MC finds a tape recorder and uses it to record one final message, represented by Adachi picking up the tape recorder and recording said final message, as well as our camera sustaining the heat damage halfway through the video. The song even perfectly complements this idea. Remember how I mentioned in the intro verse's main melody, it creates an unnatural loop that makes it sound like it's repeating its playback? That same instrumental line comes back in this last verse, unchanged, which means we can use this point to create a perfect loop right back to the beginning of the song, as if it all started right here. But what if we were to assume this is a shot of the end? After all, sequentially, this is the last scene in the MV, and like I mentioned earlier, the entirety of the song is placed in quotation brackets, so it's possible that everything we hear is being played off of the tape recorder, and therefore this shot of Adachi Rei listening to the recording is of reality. That she isn't some sort of representation, but a true, corporeal, highly advanced digital lifeform who visits and wanders through this world's dilapidated remains and stumbles across this tape recorder. It's possible that she brought this flower from her world after this doomsday had occurred, and that she lays this flower down next to the recorder as a sign of paying respects to the voice who recorded it all. We could even say that the music supports this ending as well. After all, everything comes to a sudden stop as soon as the melodic line finishes. It's as if after all of this time, stuttering and repeating itself, the MP3 file or the audio tape finally plays out all the way. Or maybe it's just so overheated at this point that it can no longer play out. But there's also a chance that because these ending sequences can be perfectly looped, that both the beginning and ending scenarios I mentioned are true. But who knows, nothing is explicitly confirmed by Iyowa after all, but it's all fun to think about. Now that was a lot to get through, but I'm sure you now understand at this point why I'm just so fascinated with Iyowa's Heat Abnormal. It absolutely lives up to the hype, and I'm extremely glad I ran into this song on my Vocaloid journey. It's a song I bump pretty often when I'm listening to music, and my thoughts on it have come a long way from the first time I listened to it. I actually happen to have my very first impressions of Heat Abnormal recorded and posted on this channel, and by the end of my final reaction, when I have actual context for the story of Heat Abnormal, you can hear it leaves me in tears. I was sad for the people, but I wanted to know more. It was only a matter of time after falling in love with this song that I'd want to gush about it somehow, hence this video. But while reflecting on Heat Abnormal, I naturally began to wonder what exactly makes it so good musically, and so I turned to the composition to give me an answer. I wanted an opportunity to look at not just the story in the lyrics, but the story in the instrumentals, and so when I began listening to the instrumentals, I thought I had a clear enough picture just from what was presented, just from what my ears picked up.
But that alone is insufficient.
Because I believe hearing all the different layers in true, clear isolation really puts into perspective just what was going through Iyowa's mind when composing Heat Abnormal. Madness. Absolute madness. First off, I'd like to thank some commenters on my last video for bringing to my attention publicly available stems for Vocaloid songs. I had absolutely no idea this was a thing, and I'm extremely grateful for these. Thank you so much. I must have bumped Kyu Kurarin like 10 times that night. Anyway, after acquiring Heat Abnormal's individual stems, I got a chance to peer into each layer individually. This form of layered listening is normally how I listen to a song, no matter what. But even with that, it's always easier to listen to it in isolation if possible. Even if you feel like you already know it, you might just learn something new. And in this song's case, I know I did. Let me tell you, Heat Abnormal's song structure is unlike anything I've ever heard of in a song. It's unique. I was floored. I was baffled. I was reminded of this one comment by Coda de Salmon that said, "You playing the isolated audio clips of the instrumentals actually just makes this sound like some garbage jumbled up noises sometimes. I don't know how Iyowa manages to make it sound so good when it's all together. Definition of trust the process." Trust the process indeed. We can all agree Hida Nomo is a pretty great sounding song, right? There's a lot of complexity in its melodies and how it chooses to shift between its more diatonic melodies to its more dissonant ones and back. It's really something special, and it all comes together in this final product to make something beautiful. Something that I've bumped at least 100 times now. But let me just play some examples of what I mean by madness. Remember Miku from earlier? Here's your chance to hear her better, but as you'll notice, the tonal center is on a whole different planet than the main vocals. It really just goes to show that Iyowa was on a completely different level when it comes to making music. He takes such a unique approach when deciding what each and every line should sound like. So what could all this mean for the story of Hida Nomo? Last time, we saw that Iyowa is no stranger to using even the most minute elements to assist in his composition story, and Hida Nomo is really no different. In this case, we have these chaotic and ununiform melodies screaming out underneath the more louder uniform lines as a result of the song's mixing keeping most of the chaos at bay. And it's set pieces like this that remind us that no matter where our MC looked, there was pain, there was suffering, there was death. Some of it apparent through our main melodies, but some of it obscured by the growing chaos and smoke clouds. And these harmonies that the Miku create with Adachi do well to establish a looming uneasiness for the overall tone of the song. It's strange though, you have all of this chaos happening in the lower layers, but you hardly notice it in the final mixing, and yet the uneasy tone is apparent throughout the whole song for anyone who hears it. Maybe we do actually hear these lines for the first time, but it's just so low in the mixing we perceive its madness on a subconscious level. But I digress. The combination of passing the tonal center torch between different melodic lines, those same lines creating counter melodies that fill in each other's rhythmic gaps, and all of the mixing so every part shines but doesn't outshine the other or affect the main tone of the song, really just everything about this song. It all takes so much skill and experience to pull off. It's really something you have to give Iyowa props for. Okay, there is one more thing I want to gush about before we bid farewell to Heat Abnormal for today, and that is the Project Sekai version. This was my first impression of Heat Abnormal after all, so I feel like I have to gush about it. First off, huge shout out to all the vocalists who delivered an amazing cover of a song that's so incredibly difficult to sing. Of course, there's the very demanding vocal speed and articulation from the main verses, but as we all know, there's a demand for a very high vocal delivery in the second half of the chorus. It's something that a Vocaloid voice bank could hit with ease, but something that's otherwise difficult for us inferior humans. Project Sekai's arrangement addresses this issue in a pretty neat way, not by removing the octave switch completely, but instead opting to shift it to the support vocals, so those who can hit those high notes can shine just as much as those who can't. And it is a little hard to hear at first, but regardless, it all sounds amazing when put together with our vocal harmonies. Really shows the dedication, hard work, and raw talent of the singers. Huge props to them. But anyway, there is another section of this I want to highlight, and it's at the very end where the heat abnormality bursts from inside our singer. And I really think it's in this cover's benefit to have so many singers. When we get to where the singers are expressing their disbelief and they repeat to themselves, "This isn't reality, this isn't reality, this isn't reality, this isn't reality," it seamlessly alternates between our singers expressing the same thoughts, which works in the narrative's favor, seeing as everyone on the planet is experiencing the same pain simultaneously. So you could interpret this as a new way to visualize all the people thinking the same thing as they burst into flames. And to put the cherry on top of this cover, when all is said and done by the people, it's only Kaito that remains to sing the very last part. All of the humans around him have already perished, leaving just himself to carry the flame and finish the message as fast as he can, before he too succumbs to the heat death of the planet. Heat Abnormal is a song that truly did bring me to tears after hearing about its story, because as I was listening, I put myself in the shoes of the people that lived through this tragedy, and I could only sympathize for them. I understood why so many people fell in love with this song. It really is that good. And it's especially heartbreaking when you consider the people that were likely affected by this tragedy, namely Uwagaki and possibly even singer M and G all the way back in Heat Normal. And to think that there could be even more to this story that we have yet to see from Iyowa. It's exciting to think about, and I'm all in for the ride. I think it's amazing that Iyowa could tell such a powerful and evocative story through not only its lyrics, but its visuals and its music. Heat Abnormal is just so peak. If you made it to the very end of this video, thanks for watching. Is there a specific Vocaloid song or artist you want me to analyze or possibly even react to for the first time? Let me know in the comments. And I hope to see you in the next video. Alright, again, thanks for watching.